and welcome to Insight, everyone. I'm Nnamdi Adikpo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori. Thank you so much for joining us.
On this episode, I will be moderating two critical conversations that have the power to transform Nigeria's trajectory economically and socially. The first conversation will attempt to chart a course through the untapped potential of the shipping and maritime sector, exploring why this gold mine remains underutilized and how we can harness its power to drive economic growth beyond oil. And then I will delve into the pursuit of equality, examining the drive for zero discrimination and what it means for Nigerians to have equal rights before the law. Then, of course, Elizabeth will be on board. She will come on board with yet another interesting conversation. Elizabeth?
Of course, we'll also be talking about the impacts of heat waves on human health and the ecosystem. And our doctor will be telling us what to do this season to survive.
Very well then, let's kickstart the program.
Whatever the issues are,
the National Assembly is constitutionally empowered to scrutinize,
however complex or intricate.
We have involved all the academia, the members of the academia. We have involved the academies.
Be it government's policies or in fact any issue of public concern.
Our job is to help you gain clarity and make sense of it all.
This is not really healthy for our democracy.
There's a lot of aggrievance in terms of who has been in power longest and who becomes the governor of the state.
It's also in the quality of food being consumed.
After all, perception is insight.
And gaining understanding is also getting insight.
Now let's get started on the vast potential of Nigeria's shipping and maritime sector, with revenue generation from that sector becoming a viable alternative to oil revenues. With an estimated annual revenue generation of 7 trillion naira, I should say. I stand to be corrected, but that's about it. Analysts and experts believe that a strategic repositioning of policies, perhaps or clearly infrastructure and regulation, could position Nigeria as a formidable player in the global shipping and maritime trade. But what does it take to unlock this potential and position Nigeria as a major player in the global shipping and maritime industry? Joining me now is Dr. Bolaji Akinola, a maritime analyst and chief executive officer, ships and ports. Aside Dr. Akinola's knowledge of the Nigerian maritime sector, he is also a corporate communication expert. He joins us via Zoom from Lagos, and he will be sharing invaluable insights on the challenges, opportunities, and strategies for harnessing the power of the shipping and maritime sector to drive Nigeria's economic growth. Welcome to the program, sir. Welcome, Doc. Glad to have you here on Insight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adikpo. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Yeah.
Great. Good to have you here. Doc, there's been so much talk on why Nigeria has continually lagged in leveraging its strategic location to becoming a major hub for regional and international trade. And the consequences, so much has been said about the consequence implications for the nation's economic growth and development. But let's not revel in all of the narratives that affect infrastructural upgrades and investments, in our attempts at modernizing our ports. That has happened time and again. I would rather you and I, or rather you as an expert, you do a comparative analysis of the situation at our ports at the moment, and that of maybe one or two from another client, that you consider as a model or models for where we should be. The question, Doc, really is this: what makes our ports less competitive with global shipping hubs like the ones in Singapore, the one in Dubai, for instance? Are these perhaps the same reasons why countries like Benin, Ghana, and Togo appear to be stealing out on their right from under our very nose?
Thank you very much again. And this discussion is really very apt at this time. You are talking about the port. Yes, I will narrow down to the ports. But the discussion now at a national level is discussing the marine and blue economy,
True.
which goes beyond just the seaports. The marine and blue economy, harnessing our marine and blue economy, implies exploring sustainable exploration of our marine resources for the economic benefits of this nation. And the key components of the marine economy I have grouped into 5.
Okay.
Fishing and aquaculture,
True.
shipping and transportation, tourism and recreation, offshore energy and mining, and pharmaceuticals and cosmetics. So essentially, this is what the marine and blue economy refers to. And we are talking about harnessing these resources to promote the economic growth of our country. Before I narrow down to the ports that you talked about, let me take these key components of the marine and blue economy one after the other. The first one is
and quickly too, because I need for us to double down on key elements,
on the ports.
especially on the ports. Yes. So,
on the ports. So
I'd like for you to do
fishing
like
and
a question.
aquaculture,
Yes.
that is practically dead. And it's a huge industry, it's a huge component of our marine and blue economy. Because earlier you talked about the maritime industry as alternative to oil and gas. So I say yes, it is alternative. It is also an enabler of both oil and non-oil exports. And we'll discuss that. But as an alternative, looking at boosting and harnessing our fishing and aquaculture potential, I think is a major task that this government must try to achieve.
Okay.
At a time, we had a vibrant fish trawling industry in Nigeria, which employed over 300,000 people at the same time. When piracy, sea robbery, and attacks on the waterways came, that industry died. It is coming back to life now, but then it is dominated by Chinese and Greek vessels. So this is one area.
And then we're getting incursions, and still we're getting incursions on our waters from neighboring countries.
Certainly we are. So that is one key alternative that we should begin to look to. And we talked then about tourism and recreation. You know what it is. Elsewhere you see people cruising on the waterways, enjoying their holidays. I was discussing with a friend, a ship owner, in December. I said, look, dirty December, where is the shipping sector here? We should have a cruise vessel anchored somewhere as an alternative to the hotels and the lounges on shore that people are going to. So that is also a big business. And then offshore energy and mining, that's the third one I'm discussing. We are already doing a lot of offshore energy. I mean, we are doing a lot of offshore exploration of oil, which is good. And but offshore mining is still very minimal. And we have a lot of minerals under our ocean beds, which we need to also begin to talk about. We should begin that conversation so that it will help us to harness those potentials. And pharmaceuticals and cosmetics, believe it or not, we have many products that rely on our marine resources. Yes, for pharmaceuticals, many people don't know that. We import a lot of our pharmaceuticals. We spend a lot of foreign exchange. We expend a lot of foreign exchange to import so many drugs. But there are many of these drugs are actually marine-derived medicines. Antibiotics are derived from marine bacteria. We have antiviral drugs, which come from marine sponges. Marine corals are also good materials for developing anti-cancer agents. So all of these things are there. Even cosmetics. Some of the cosmetics that we use are derived from marine resources. So we need to be intentional. This is the point I'm trying to get at in terms of harnessing our marine resources. Now to the last one, which is shipping and transportation, which is where the port development you talked about will be coming in. And I will talk about that in two folds.
Okay.
So shipping and transportation, we talk of owning vessels, using ships to drive our commodities back and forth. And then the other one is the port, where these ships berth to discharge or to load. I said earlier that the shipping sector can provide an alternative. It is also an enabler of more resources for our country. Our crude oil will be meaningless if it is not shipped to the market. But who does the shipping? This is one key issue that I hope this government is able to address. Who does the shipping? It is the foreign interest, the foreign buyers. We should be doing the shipping. And that will help us derive more money from our crude oil. Right now, we sell as FOB, free on board. That means the buyer arranges the shipping of our crude oil.
You know, Dr. Akinola, it's interesting that you've raised a couple of issues, in your opening. And even though, yes, I tried to pin you on the issue of the ports, but I like how you've approached it from this. Yes, I like how you've approached it from these 5 categories. And it's given me an idea that, look, there are components that we need to develop, to drive some of these, any of these 5 categories. And I'd like for you to, talk a bit more on, the human capital development components, because in your opening, you referenced, the place of expatriates and where we should ordinarily, or what we should be doing on our own, and, outside of what expatriates and what foreign vessels and foreigners are doing at the moment. So in terms of human capital development, requirements, and how Nigeria can ensure that it has this skilled workforce needed to drive the growth, needed to drive the innovation, whether it's in the shipping area or, the maritime industry generally. Take shipbuilding, for instance. Take dredging, another example. These are areas that we still heavily rely on expatriates. Isn't it a function of our private sector participation, of course, in addition to other roles that the private sector should be playing, whether in investments or innovation? Or what is the challenge really? Are the incentives on ground not enough to encourage greater participation of the private sector in some of these areas?
Okay, so the laws are there that these laws were promulgated to encourage the private sector, but the implementation of these laws are at best dismal. For instance, you have the cabotage law, which says, look, coastal trading within Nigerian waters must become the exclusive preserve of Nigerian vessels. Vessels owned by Nigerians, crewed by Nigerians, and even maintained in Nigeria. But the implementation of that law, that's the Coastal and Inland Shipping Act of 2003, is at best abysmal. It's shoddy. So you end up giving a lot of waivers to foreign entities, and Nigerians lose a lot of resources in that process. Our coastal trade, even as we speak, is dominated largely by foreign interests. Not because we don't have Nigerian ship owners, but they are unable to compete because those key parameters that will help them to compete against their foreign counterparts are missing. For instance, the cabotage law I talked about provides for what is known as the Cabotage Vessel Financing Fund, CVFF, which is a low-interest capital that will help Nigerian vessels to acquire vessels, Nigerian ship owners to acquire vessels, and maintain their vessels so that they can compete against their foreign counterparts. But the CBFF, more than 20 years down the line, is just there. Not a dime has been disbursed to any Nigerian ship owner. Okay, so these are the issues. The idea was develop capacity from coastal trade, then you go to international water trading. But when we are still struggling with even developing the coastal trade capacity, it becomes difficult to even begin to talk of crude oil lifting. So I was talking about crude oil lifting. We sell our oil, crude oil, to foreign entities, to the foreign markets, but we do not have a say in how it is shipped. But if we are the ones shipping our crude oil, we will provide jobs to our teeming seafarers, and there are many of them that are in the labor markets, and the numbers are increasing by the day. By doing the shipping of our crude to the international markets, we will also retain more value in country. And I understand up to a third of the value we derive from crude oil will also accrue as foreign earnings to us if we do the shipping of our crude. The same thing in terms of importation. More than 5,000, well, there was a dip last year. Last year it was just a bit over 4,000 vessels came into this country, bringing in various imported items. Not one of those vessels is owned by a Nigerian. Not one. And that has implication in cost, in terms of cost. So the capacity, yes, I agree with you, is missing. But shipping is capital intensive. It is long-term investment. Government support is inevitable, which is not being forthcoming.
You know, talking about capacity building and referencing government support and where government should step in and the level of, foundational support it should provide in the first place. It brings me to, the critical issue of integration. I mean, integrating the maritime sector with other sectors, maybe manufacturing, agriculture, just so we create, a more diversified and resilient economy. We see ongoing efforts. We know, yes, there are ongoing efforts right now at the Apapa ports, trying to link rail to some other parts of the, country and move goods. In some other parts, we've seen haulage as well. But, there are envisaged potentials and benefits, which will be huge. Of course, what's your perception of some of these ongoing projects, integrating some of the sectors or aimed at integrating the sectors? What do you currently see or what do you foresee and consider as a clog in the wheel of progress in terms of, challenges?
Okay, so we, of course, a lot of maritime activities are going on in Apapa right now. Both, the Lagos Port Complex, Apapa, remains the largest seaport, and it is the busiest, followed by Tinkan Island Port, and then I would say Onne Port. But of course, you are aware that Lekki Port came on stream not too long ago.
Yes, true.
The core challenges we are facing, and you talked earlier about diversion of cargoes to ports of neighboring countries. And it is true, you are correct. Because
we lose almost to 20 trillion annually. That's the estimate. From just Apapa ports alone. That's just for Apapa ports alone.
Yes. So it's the estimate. I haven't done the numbers. Okay. So, but then the point is that we lose a lot of money to the ports of neighboring countries because of two key reasons. Number one is the high cost of doing business at our ports. Number two is the restriction on importation of so many items. So people want to use ports of neighboring countries to beat those fiscal policies that government has put in place, and also to evade payment of certain charges that they would ordinarily incur at Nigerian ports. But I'm also aware that government is trying to streamline all this by integrating some of these charges and even totally eliminating some of them, which is a major step that will help to address these issues. One of the drivers of costs, of the high cost of doing business at our ports, is the manual process of cargo examination, while the other key driver is the multiplicity of government agencies at the ports.
So modernization of our ports, investments in infrastructure, these are germane, these are key if we want to make any progress going forward.
Agree with you, certainly.
Dr. Akinola, very quickly, because I understand we're totally out of time now, 2 key targets I want you to set for the Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy. One short-term, one long-term. Very quickly, 2 key targets coming from you for the minister, for the ministry, for the country as far as this sector is concerned. A short and a long-term target. 2, quick.
Yeah. So for the short term, I have them in A and B. Short term A is to drive fresh investment into the Lagos complex, Apapa. Apapa Port right now is doing about 1 million TEUs of container. I assure you, with additional investment of about $500 million, which I know the private sector is set to undertake, the capacity of that port can triple within a year.
Okay. Short term 2?
Short term 1B is to cut down on the manual processes and multiple government agencies that are involved in cargo inspection and cargo release.
So digitizing the system. Digitizing the system.
That way, we will eliminate this desire for importation through the ports of neighboring countries and then smuggling them into Nigeria.
And finally, your long-term targets?
And finally, on the shipping component, government should address the challenges, the factors that are limiting the participation of Nigerian ship owners in the affreightment of our cargo, both within the coastal environment and trading within international waters. I think if we do this, we will draw a lot more value from our marine resources.
Dr. Bolaji Akinola, Maritime Analyst and Chief Executive Officer, Ships and Port. I would like to thank you so much for joining us on Insight. It's been a delight listening to you. I mean, talk about these issues. Thank you so much for coming on our program.
Wish we had more time. You can see it's a very broad area of discussion. True. Each of these key components of the industry will take a lot of time to really discuss. But
of course, Doc, we will be. If you oblige us, we will be bringing you. Would love to bring you into the studio time and again to talk on this issue. We would very much appreciate if you do join us whenever we reach out to you. Thank you so much for joining us today. At least we look forward to having you come on the program some other time.
Thank you.
Moving on now, for every morning that the world awakens, we are reminded that equality is not a myth and shouldn't be a dream. It is a fundamental right, and that is why the world celebrates that fact March 1 every year. Well, I want to talk a bit about equality under the law in Nigeria, putting that against the background or backdrop of the Zero Discrimination Day, which honors the struggles, the triumphs, and the unwavering resilience of those who have faced injustice. Let me bring in my guest, Hamza Liu. He's himself considered a human rights activist, having, showed himself small in that area. Not small, but plenty, significant enough for us to invite him on the program. Of course, he is also the executive director of the Initiative for Grassroots Advancement, INGRA, operating out of Lokoja, Kogi State. He's a customer on our program here on Insight. Thank you so much, Hamza, for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much, Nnamdi, for having me again.
Fantastic. Hamza, I won't pretend to be naive in believing that the world will suddenly become, that idyllic, discrimination-free space where individuals like yourself and myself can live without fear or prejudice or oppression. What I'm saying in essence is that despite the progress made in advancing human rights, discrimination remains a global issue. topical issue, pervasive one globally, and here in Nigeria, we often hear issues of double standards playing out, whether it's in the application of the law, or whether it's in the dispensation of the law itself. And this is also believed to be pervasive. In your considered opinion, what do you think are the core issues driving this persistence of discrimination? Even now, as we fight for equality, as we fight for social justice, and we're linking that to our national development. What are the factors driving this persistence in a society like ours, and how do you think we can begin to address them? We've lost you there for a minute. Your audio is gone. If you don't mind clicking on your audio so we can hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Perfect. Please go ahead. We can hear you clearly now.
Okay, I like the fact that began premise on the fact that discrimination is an inherent human behavior. It's something that we're all born with. It's a primordial a trait that human beings is one of our applied or apps that comes to our software as being human beings. But our aim and our objective is to ensure that as human beings, we get to that El Dorado where, like you said, we do not have that kind of discriminatory tendency. It is still there. It's whether you discriminate based on sex, on gender, on economic discrimination. It could also be discrimination based on status, societal status. So human beings have to discriminate because that's how we survive. But what we are running away from is this negative discrimination, that people get discriminated solely because of things that are out of their not of their own making. For instance, where I was born, or my societal background, all those things are out of my hands. And so it is important that we learn it. Not to discriminate is one of those attributes that we learn as human beings. We're not born with it. And so we know that, yes, human beings tend to want to discriminate. That's why we're setting up, celebrating days like this that says, let's not discriminate. Let's teach our people not to discriminate. Let's ensure that people are treated based on who they are rather than what they are or where they come from or what their societal background is all about. So I think that moving forward, like you said, is one of those our objectives, our push towards being a human being, that we must get to a point where we don't discriminate.
We seem to have would I say peculiar situation here in Nigeria, where, as a multi-ethnic society, many ethnic groups, and we see this discrimination play out oftentimes. And I wonder, this is my question to you, Hamza, I wonder how we, in our quest for national integration, for equity, for justice, how can we balance the need to protect individual rights with the need, to promote social cohesion and unity in a society as diverse, like ours, often where our diversity is often seen as a source of tension rather than strength?
I think if you ask me for my own opinion, I would say that we should not run away from the fact that we're discriminatory. We should accept it as being human.
Are you saying, Hamza, that we should embrace it? Or are you saying are you saying we should embrace the fact that, yes, we have a problem? Or are you saying we should embrace discrimination as what exactly?
No, what I mean is that we should accept that we are discriminatory in nature.
Oh, okay.
And that it should not be something that is inherently bad about being human being. No. It's something that we need to take advantage of, to say, because patriotism, if you look at the idea around patriotism and national patriotic movement, it's about discriminating against people who are not from your state, who are not from your country. It's about putting your country first above every other country. That's discriminatory in its own right. So you can make use of those traits for our national development. Yes, I understand that it's a fine line between what is good and what ought not to be. But if we accept it, it now means that when we are going to socialize our people, we will say use those traits to the advantage of our country, to the advantage of our community. Remember, discrimination always raises its head when there is resource control, when there's something to compete about. And that is what makes us human. Once we see a competition, we want to use that trait to ensure that we win whatever the competition is all about. And that's why we discriminate. Whether it is in the area of societal values, for instance, the marriage institution, the cultural institution, is in school, all those places where you see that there is a competition, discrimination finds its way into those places. So I'm saying that if we accept it, then which means that we can work with it to achieve what we want. It can be good or it can be bad. There is no human quality that is inherently bad or inherently good on its own. It's what you make of it. And that is where the National Orientation Agency comes in. What can we use? How can we use it to now build our democratic, our national plans, our national programs?
Do we wait until we get to the level of the National Orientation Agency? I was just going to jump in there and ask if perhaps you think, there's a role that education plays in combating discrimination, and how we can assure that at various levels of our educational system, students, whether pupils from primary schools, students at the secondary school level, undergraduates are equipped to promote empathy, with these skills that promotes understanding and also engenders inclusivity.
Nnamdi, you are even moving ahead of, you're moving to, I say you've jumped into the realm of structured school environment. We're talking about the family. The family should be the first school that a child learns that there are certain behaviors that we should not accept as a people.
And
yes,
I agree with
we are born with discriminatory traits, but these discriminatory traits, this is where you can use them, this is where you cannot use them. But because the family unit is not working the way it should work, we now move to the next level, which is the school system. Our educational policies should use those traits and work on them. Teachers should be taught how to bring the best out of students and tell them what is good and what is not good. And then, of course, finally, agencies like the National Orientation Agency can now augment as an adult to make you understand that as a nation, we do not want this kind of behaviors. So you can see these 3 steps. Most of the times, because the first step has failed, we want the school to take over. The school is not meant as an alternative to the family. It is meant to complement the family. But because our family system is no longer working, we, the parents, have failed as the first teachers for children to let them know that no, this person is a human being first, before the person is a Christian or a Muslim, before the person is a man or a woman, before the person is a northerner or a southerner. I don't even know what those terminologies mean, because in our growing up, everybody was a human being first. We need to teach that at the family unit. But alas, we did not do that work. We're now expecting teachers to be the ones to do that work for us. And then we now expect that as a national program, the National Orientation Agency should now pick the final button and make it into a viable policy program that we can run with as a nation. So yes, I agree with you, education, but first of all, it should not be the structured education. It must be the family education, the societal education, the community education.
Earlier on, I was talking about how equality under the law does not preclude the practice of discrimination. Just like, just like equality under the law does not in itself materialize into a just result, even for an individual or maybe for the collective. So soon, Hamza, we get an opportunity to remind the global community, of the imperatives for equality, before the law, not minding whether, yes, theoretically it is there, the law says do this, Nigerian constitution says, look, under the law we are equal and all of that. So this drive, March 1, will push for zero discrimination. What is your message?
For me,
yes, please come in here.
For me, that the fact that we are pushing that the equality before the law is a concept of our legal jurisprudence. Means that we know that inherently we are not equal before any law. It is the survival of the fittest that works. But because we already accept that we are not equal,
you're saying society. Are you saying society is truly what George Owen said it is? That it is an animal farm?
It is short. Yes, we know that, and that's why we created a concept around judicial equality, to say that laws are applicable to everybody. But we know technically in law, laws are not applicable to everybody. There's discrimination even within the law itself. Certain persons are immune from certain issues. A president is immune from prosecution based on the fact that he's simply because he's a president.
So against this background, Hamza, against this background, what then is your message to those who wield power and those who are still struggling to find their voice?
My message is this: that the power belongs to us that are that are the ones that are electing these people. We hold the power. We decide whether you should sit on that chair or not. The equality that we have is that one man, one vote. Everybody is equal. That vote does not know whether you're a man or a woman. Doesn't know whether you are a child, you are a rich person or a poor person. We determine what happens with the leaders. And so discrimination should not be because of whether you are rich or you are poor. You can get elected to serve your people. And that is why the law says, and when we want to elect people, we say it doesn't matter. The minimum you can have is be able to be responsible, be a responsible person. We will now vote you into power. So it is important that as people, as citizens of Nigeria, that we understand that individuals are inherently humans first before they're anything else.
True.
And unless we begin to see it that way, we're always going to find ourselves electing our leaders and basing our judgment on whether the person is tall or short, is fair or white, speaks Igbo or Hausa, is a Christian, prays in this direction or that direction. It doesn't really matter where the person comes from. And that is the reason why we are getting to that, we are pushing towards that El Dorado of saying we are all equal. We are all human beings first. The law is for everybody, it's not just for some people. And I'm hoping that as we celebrate these days, as we remind ourselves of these days, it is going to be important that we teach our next generation, our kids coming up, that this is the ideal that we want. It may not be what we have presently, but it's the ideal that we're looking for.
Ideal practice. I mean, our plan, hope, and expectation is that indeed we are all equal before the law. Hamza Aliyu, Executive Director, human rights activist, I must say, I should mention that, because within the context of our conversation today, you identify as a human rights activist, development advocate, I should also add. Of course, Hamza Aliyu is also the Executive Director of the Initiative for Grassroots Advancement, INGRA, operating out of Lokoja there in Kogi State. I'd like to thank you so much for coming on our program, Insight. It's been an interesting conversation. We look forward to having you come on Insight presently. Thank you so much, Hamza.
Thank you very much for having me again, Namdi.
Yeah. Elizabeth Omori is up next. She will be talking about the weather. Have you noticed how hot it is? I mean, these days, well, if you want to know how to manage it as it is, Elizabeth Omori has a doctor lined up in our next conversation. Elizabeth Omori is up next.
Heat waves, also known as extreme heat, is a period of abnormally hot weather. It is also a prolonged period of excessively high temperatures that can significantly impact human health, often leading to heat-related illnesses. Severe heat waves could cause catastrophic crop failures and thousands of deaths from hypothermia. They have increased the risk of wildfires in areas with drought. Today, we will look at health implications, and my guest, Dr. Alera Roberts, Associate Professor of Community Health, College of Medicine, University of Lagos, who joins us via Zoom, will speak to us. Dr. Alera, thank you so much for joining us on Insight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. The heat is hitting so hard, health-wise, this season.
Well, like you quite rightly defined, heat waves are a season of unreasonably high heat, and it comes with all its added environmental and health challenges. And why we seem to be having excessive heat at present, which can be attributed to the increase in the number of greenhouse gases that are being produced, the climate change that we are seeing, deforestation, urbanization. There are so many causes of these of the things that lead to this heat waves that we're seeing right now. The causes can be both natural and human induced, induced by human behavior. But we have to admit that in the last 2 or 3 years, it has become quite significant.
Okay, so what are the illnesses this weather condition could cause to our health?
Well, the effects are both immediate, short-term, medium-term, and long-term. In the immediate is the heat exhaustion and heat stroke. And a lot of people have found that is an issue, because despite the fact that we live in essentially a tropical part of the world, and we should by logic be used to high heat, we find that there are a lot of people who are experiencing symptoms of dizziness, of nausea, dehydration, rapid heart beat, and in some cases, even some severe cases, they can have loss of consciousness, and that is becoming a little bit more frequent than was used to, because people are being exposed to high heat for longer and longer periods. Dehydration is actually quite serious, and it's worse in what we call the extremes of age, the very young and the very old, because somehow the dehydration may not necessarily provoke a sense of thirst where they are actively asking for water. Then there are the respiratory issues, because heat waves are associated with a lot of air pollution, and this can cause an increase in respiratory illnesses. We're having a lot more people coming in complaining of asthma. In the medium term, in the short to medium term, of course, as you mentioned, crop failure means that there's a loss of food, and malnutrition becomes an issue. The loss of water, the drying up of natural water sources in the heat wave means that we have what are called water deserts appearing, and people now start migrating from place to place looking for water for themselves, for their cattle, for their animals. And then, of course, there are other issues. There are skin problems that can happen in the inability to wash properly, or the excessive heat and sweating can cause skin rashes, fungal infections, sunburn. So there are all sorts of things that can happen. Some of them are by virtue of the other conditions that the heat wave causes, that also has an effect on health.
Okay, currently, it looks like all the cooling gadgets are really not working. Some of them just blow hot air. But how do we cope with the waves, the heat waves this time around?
Well, this is the paradox that we are facing right now. I mean, I'm sitting here and I must confess to you that I have been so uncomfortable. I've got both air conditioning and fan blowing in order for me to be in a state of mind to even answer your question. But at the same time, I'm acutely aware of the fact that the use of the air conditioning means that I am also adding to the emission of greenhouse gases. That's is going to further exacerbate the problem. So there are all sorts of things that we really ought to do. Again, starting from me personally, to the community that I live in, to the nation. We individually, I can, for instance, drink a lot of cold water. Even just drinking water, whether it's ice cold or room temperature water, a lot of drinking water has to replace the sweat that I've lost and helps my body temperature to regulate itself. I often find that when I'm going out like I'm going to work or I'm going to class, the shirt I wear, if I wring it out in water and wear it damp, it cools me naturally.
Okay.
Allowing trees and plants and shrubbery around your home helps to what we call reduce the solar radiation, which helps to cool the house and cool the environment that you live in. And of course, if you're in a place where you can build your own home, you can add to your home, building porches and shading your windows so that the walls of your house are not in direct, the sun rays don't, shine directly onto the walls can also help in cooling the home and whatnot. People have, I mean, my grandmother used to do it. Curtains, the wall hangings and the door hangings that she would hang, she would have also squeezed out in water and rehung them damp so that they also help to cool the environment. But as a community, we do need to plant more trees.
Okay.
We should stop cutting down our trees. We should help to plant more trees. We should encourage green spaces, particularly in our urban areas. We need to have a lot more green spaces because the loss of the green spaces is adding to the heat that we are seeing. And of course, as a nation, we need to reduce our carbon footprint. We need to look at more sustainable energy resources. We need to minimize waste. I forgot to mention that waste, refuse generation, methane. Methane is a gas produced by the decomposition of refuse and waste in our landfills. And that is something that we really need to make conscious efforts to reduce.
Okay, still talking about coping, what about food, the food we eat? Does food contribute to the uneasy feeling? What should we be eating now? What shouldn't we be eating now, currently?
Now you're going to get me into trouble with all the food manufacturing companies. Ideally, it is what we call eat close to the ground.
Okay.
And that is increasing your intake of more natural foods, foods that are one step away from the ground, as it were, you know, fruits, vegetables, what I call one ingredient foods like the gari that the Yorubas make eba, or fufu, or inyo, you know, one ingredient forms the food, or else, and the food should be more natural, less processed. So a lot more fruits and vegetables, you know, a lot more eating close to the ground, making sure that you are avoiding processed and packaged foods. Because it is the additives and the things in these processed and packaged foods that increase the inflammation of the body and causes us to produce more sweat. I am guilty of enjoying a hot cup of tea in the middle of the afternoon, but that is because I like my hot cup of tea. Yes, it does make me sweat. And I do have the luxury of being able to drink that hot cup of tea and have a fan blowing me so that I can cool down. But otherwise, no, it really is a personal preference. I tend to love ice cold water, and everybody is saying, doctor, you are old, you are getting older now, you shouldn't be drinking cold water. And I keep asking, who said that? Show me the journal, the article, who is the scientist, what did they base their research on? It really doesn't matter. If you prefer your water ice cold, by all means, go ahead and enjoy it. If you prefer your water room temperature, by all means, go ahead and enjoy it. But drink water. That's the bottom line. Drink plenty of water. In this heat, in our environment already, we already recommend 3 to 4 liters of water a day over a staggered period. Whether you drink it as water or orange juice or tea or coffee, you know, have sufficient water. Even soup, pepper soup is water. Fruits and vegetables, yeah, it has a lot of water, but drink sufficient water. And now with the heat waves on, you need to be consciously making sure you replace your fluids.
Okay, somebody talked about carbonated drinks. Are they advisable at this time?
Why do you want to put me in trouble with the food manufacturing company? No, I'm sorry. No.
Okay.
We should certainly not be drinking as many carbonated drinks as we are drinking. I'm very, very sorry, but carbonated soft drinks should be taken in absolute moderation. I think we should go back to what we used to do when we were growing up. We only had carbonated soft drinks on your birthday and at Christmas or Easter. So once, twice, maximum 3 times in a year.
Right, talking about persons with cardiovascular issues, what do we wear this season, especially those with such ailments?
I do like a lot of our native costumes, our native gear, they seem to have evolved because of the part of the world where we live. So, for the women, the buba and iro, the blouse and wrapper leaves you cool and comfortable and decently covered. For the men, the buba and shokoto, the jalabeya, particularly when they wear the white, even an agbada in white, forms a heat shield, as it were, and allows the body to cool while reflecting away the sun rays. But really, so long as you're decently covered in a socially acceptable manner and you are comfortable, you can wear anything.
Okay, what about cotton? Do we have specifics? Do we have specifics when it comes to the material? Polyesters, nylons,
I would also say natural fibers, cottons, and breathable fabrics, certainly. Nowadays, it's difficult to say polyester or nylon or this or that because they're making a lot of these things very breathable. Because the issue is the fabric needs to be breathable and it needs to be able to wick the sweat away from the body. So nowadays, there are a lot more fibers that do that. I don't know the specifics, I must confess, but so long as it feels comfortable and it doesn't trap heat into the body or trap sweat on your body that can lead to rashes, body odor for one thing, and rash, then fine, yes.
Before we conclude, Doctor, for babies and pregnant women, what should be the style right now, health-wise? Eating, clothing?
Plenty of fluids, babies, pregnant women, plenty of fluids, lots of breathable fabrics, stay in the shade as much as you can, out of direct exposure to the sun, certainly. And don't forget that with babies, it's very difficult. It's impossible almost to tell when they're dehydrating. So keeping them well hydrated is very important. For babies that are under 6 months that we recommend exclusive breastfeeding for, it's a lot easier because once the baby is being fed, breastfed exclusively and is being breastfed on demand, the chances are the baby is getting as much fluid as he or she needs. Is when they start coming off the breast milk and they're getting to the age of 1.5 to 3 to 5 years, that it becomes a little bit more dicey to be sure that. So it's always good to offer young children as many cups of water as they can take. They're playing outside, they're active, they're running around. That's a sign that they're well hydrated. And every sort of 15, 20 minutes, offer them a cup of water. 1 or 2 sips is all they need, and they'll rehydrate and get back to doing what they do best, play and make trouble.
Okay, Doctor, let's conclude with asthmatic patients. Do you have tips for them this season?
Yes, I do. You must, as much as possible, make sure that you are, first of all, make sure you're insured. Make sure you have your healthcare provider as a backup, as a, what do you call it, rapid dial on your phone. And make sure you have your drugs to hand. Using an inhaler, make sure you have a backup inhaler. If you have to have inhalers in every handbag, briefcase, office, home, every room in the home, your loved ones should have, your mom, your significant other should have a backup inhaler for you. And to make sure you stay away from polluted areas. It's very difficult in this part of the world now to say that because a lot of us are relying on generated electricity, which means that the generators are also causing a lot of air pollution, but you have to be extremely careful. And the minute you have difficulty in breathing, please don't hesitate and think that, oh, this feels like what I had last week, I can manage it. No, please see a specialist, your care provider, as soon as you can, please.
Dr. Alero Roberts, Associate Professor of Community Health at College of Medicine, UNILAG. We want to thank you so much for enlightening us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much.
Stay safe out there, everyone.
Thank you.
Well then, in wrapping up this episode, I'd like to say my piece. As we stand at the crossroads of economic transformation, one question continues to echo through the minds of millions of Nigerians and even those in power vested with the task of leadership. That question borders on Nigeria's diversification drive and what lies beyond oil, and Nigeria beyond oil. While there are angles and diverse perspectives to this, one answer, hidden in plain sight, is the shipping and maritime sector, a gold mine of untapped potential waiting to be unleashed. The question is, are we doing enough to mine this treasure trove? My answer is neither yes nor no. But my call to action is this. It is time to seize the moment and harness the power and opportunities in Nigeria's shipping and maritime sector to drive growth, to create jobs, and propel Nigeria to greatness. Let's set sail today for a brighter tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Do join us same time next week for more on Insight. My name is Nnamdi Odipo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori. You know the weather is getting hotter. Stay hydrated. Bye for now.
We'll see you next week.